What if the voice in your head isn't actually you? What if everything you've been told about your own mind is backwards? There's a thought running in your head right now. Maybe it's about this video, maybe it's about something you said 3 days ago. Maybe it's just background noise you've learned to ignore. Here's the question nobody asks: who is noticing that thought? Because if you can watch a thought happen, you can't be the thought. That gap, that tiny space between you and your thinking, is what ancient Vedic philosophy mapped out thousands of years ago, and what modern psychology is only now catching up to. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your mind has been making you suffer, and more importantly, how to stop letting it. Picture this: you're lying awake at 2 a.m. You're not doing anything, you're not in danger, but your mind is running a full highlight reel of every embarrassing thing you've ever done, every worst case scenario for tomorrow, every conversation you wish had gone differently. Now, here's what nobody stops to ask in that moment. If your mind is doing all that without your permission, without you asking it to, without you wanting it to, are you actually in control of it, or are you just watching it happen? This is where Vedic philosophy starts. The ancient texts make a distinction so sharp it cuts through almost every source of psychological pain in one move. They say, you are not the mind. The mind is something you have, like a tool, like a very loud, very opinionated tool that has been running your life under the assumption that it is you. Think about it this way: you have a car, you drive it, but you are not the car. If the car makes a strange noise, you don't say, I'm broken. You say, the car needs fixing. The Vedic framework says your relationship with your mind should work exactly the same way. The mind generates thoughts, emotions, fears, cravings. That's its job, but you are the one sitting in the driver's seat, watching all of that happen. The problem is that most of us have completely forgotten we're the driver. We fused with the car. We think every thought the mind produces is a personal truth, a statement about who we are, a fact about reality. And that confusion, that misidentification, is where suffering begins. The Vedic texts weren't written by people sitting in comfortable rooms theorizing. They were written by people who spent years, sometimes entire lifetimes, doing one thing: watching their own minds with extreme precision. What they documented is this: the mind has four functions. It receives information, it processes and doubts, it files things into identity, and it operates on autopilot through habit. None of those functions are you, they're all just processes, mechanical operations. The same way your heart beats without you deciding to beat it, your mind thinks without you deciding to think. The part that is actually you, what these texts call pure awareness or the observer, is the thing that notices all four of those processes happening. It doesn't judge, it doesn't react, it just sees. Here's why this matters practically. When you're anxious, your mind is generating threat assessments at high speed, worst case scenarios, danger signals. Most people experience that and think, I am anxious. This is who I am right now. The Vedic framework says something different. It says anxiety is weather. You are the sky. Weather passes, the sky remains. That's not a metaphor for positive thinking. It's a description of what's actually happening structurally in your consciousness. The thoughts are events. You are the space in which those events occur. And here's the part that should stop you cold. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, I'm such an idiot, and then felt bad about it, you just proved the point. You felt bad because some part of you disagreed with that thought. Some part of you watched that thought and said, that doesn't seem right. That watching part, that's the observer. That's what you actually are. In the 1980s, a psychologist named Aaron Beck built an entire therapeutic system around one idea: thoughts are not facts. That system became cognitive behavioral therapy, now the most widely used and researched form of psychotherapy on the planet. Decades later, a researcher named Stephen Hayes took it further with something called acceptance and commitment therapy. He introduced the concept of cognitive diffusion, which is the clinical term for learning to observe your thoughts rather than being controlled by them. His research showed that people who could create distance between themselves and their thoughts had dramatically lower rates of anxiety, depression, and chronic pain. He didn't cite the Vedic texts, but he arrived at the same place. Neuroscience has added another layer. Studies using brain imaging show that when people practice what's called diffuse thinking, observing thoughts without reacting to them, activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, decreases significantly. The brain literally calms down when you stop treating every thought as a personal emergency. What's fascinating is that the Vedic framework predicted this outcome not through brain scans but through direct observation of human experience over thousands of years. They noticed that people who mastered the observer stance suffered less. They built entire practices around cultivating it. Modern science ran the controlled trials and got the same result. The practical upshot is this: you are not your thoughts is not a spiritual belief you have to take on faith. It is a functional description of how your mind actually works, backed by both ancient observation and contemporary research. And once you really get that, once it clicks, not just intellectually, but in your actual experience, the way you relate to your own mind changes permanently. So, if this distinction is so clear, why don't we just live from it all the time? Why do we keep getting pulled back into believing we are our thoughts? The Vedic texts have a very specific answer for this. They call it the ego function, the part of the mind whose entire job is to create a story of me. It takes every thought, every emotion, every preference and says, this is who you are, this is your identity, hold on to this. And it does this because identity feels like safety. If you know who you are, you know how to navigate the world. The ego is not your enemy, it's doing its job. The problem is when it does that job so well that you forget you're more than the story it's building. Here's where it gets personal. Think about the last time someone criticized you, not your work, you, what happened in your body. Most people feel something tighten, a flash of defensiveness or shame or anger. That reaction happens because we've identified so completely with our self-image that an attack on that image feels like an attack on our survival. But if you were the observer, if you genuinely lived from that place, criticism would land differently. You'd be able to look at it and ask, is this true? Is this useful? And if it isn't, you could set it down. Not because you're suppressing emotion, but because you're not fused with the story being threatened. This is why the Vedic framework spends so much time on this one point. Misidentifying with the mind isn't just a philosophical error, it's the mechanism behind almost every form of psychological pain. Anxiety is believing the mind's threat stories are real. Depression often involves believing the mind's worthlessness stories are true. Anger is believing the mind's injustice stories require immediate action. In every case, the suffering comes from fusion, from collapsing the distance between you and the thought. Everything up to this point has been understanding. Now let's talk about practice, because understanding this intellectually and actually living from it are two completely different things. The first and most foundational practice is what you could call the naming move. When a thought arises, especially a charged one, you simply note it. There's a thought about failure. There's a thought about that conversation. There's worry happening. That's it. You're not analyzing it, not fighting it, not trying to replace it with a positive thought. You're just labeling it from a slight distance. This sounds almost insultingly simple, but the research behind it is serious. Studies show that labeling an emotion or thought reduces its intensity by activating the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, and creating a small but real separation from the reactive brain. You're doing in seconds what takes some people years of therapy to access. The second practice comes directly from the Vedic tradition, and it's even simpler. It's the question, who is aware of this? Not what am I thinking, but who is the one noticing the thinking? You can't answer that question with another thought. The mind goes quiet for a moment, and in that quiet, you get a direct taste of what the observer actually is. You don't need to meditate for hours to do this. You can do it on the subway, in a difficult meeting, in the middle of an argument. One question, 3 seconds, that's enough to break the trance. The third practice is probably the most powerful and the most uncomfortable. It's letting thoughts be wrong about you without correcting them. Your mind says you're not good enough. Instead of arguing with it or trying to replace it with I am enough, you just watch it. You let it say what it says, and you notice that you're still here, still functioning, still breathing. The thought came, the thought will go, and you, the observer, remain. This is what the Vedic texts point to when they describe the true self as unchanging. Not that you don't grow or change, but that the awareness watching your life unfold is not damaged by what it sees. It was here before the thought. It will be here after. You are not your thoughts. That's not a motivational slogan. It's a structural truth about how consciousness works, one that people have been mapping and testing for thousands of years, and one that modern psychology keeps rediscovering. The distance between you and your thinking is where your freedom actually lives. If this landed for you, subscribe. We put out new videos every week that take these same principles and break them down into something you can actually use in your daily life. No fluff, no lectures, just practical tools built on ideas that have been tested by real human experience across centuries. If you have questions about anything we covered today, drop them in the comments. I read every single one and I reply, seriously. If something didn't click or you want to go deeper on any part of this, ask. That's what the comments are for. And if you want to go further right now, there's a link in the description to the free Daily Mind Reset Kit. It's a set of practical exercises built around exactly what we talked about today: the observer practice, the naming technique, and a few others that didn't make it into this video. It's free. Go grab it. I'll see you in the next one.